Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pokemon Legends Arceus. We're going to be doing the main boss for this area in this part, so I'll be finishing the Crimson Mirelands for the most part in this video. Huzzah!
Mild aside, I love these old-timey anime settings where everyone still has crazy hair that would require modern hair products to even happen.
Listen,
Because,
I think they come out of the womb like that. It's just like if you live in anime world and you come out with wacky hair like this, you know you're a protagonist.
well, I mean, you say that as a joke, but that's how Saiyans are born, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even kidding. They come out with...
So they're born with just a whole fucking head. They just come out with a whole ass head of hair.
Except Nappa.
Do they?
Yeah, except Nappa.
So one thing that I've never understood is like there's a couple of scenes where like like how Goku and Vegeta and whatnot, they're in like the healing tube that's full of liquid, and when they come out, their hair is still like that, as opposed to like plastered down against their face, like it probably should be.
Well, it's fun. No, because there were times, like especially in the older episodes of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, where they actually paid attention to that detail. If the character was wet, the hair would be droopy. That sort of thing.
But
now
like,
it's like
no, your hair would just be flat down against your skin, though.
just completely like flat, as if you took like a product. I know.
Part of what that is that in a lot of manga, in particular, the manga that are drawn and written by the same person, as opposed to having a writer and an artist doing separate jobs, they'll start out with a more ambitious art style, and then they'll simplify as they go along because the artist needs to speed things up to get to
I immediately regret
to-
that.
That's
to
part
reach
of
their
why
deadline.
Super Saiyan exists. It's so Toriyama didn't have to color in the hair every panel.
I mean, I wouldn't be
not
surprised. But like, one example is actually Dragon Ball, which started out with more roundish designs, but got more angular as time passed, which is a fairly common way for manga art to evolve.
It took until Z, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
All of Dragon Ball still has those well-rounded proportions, and the beginning of Z continues that until like Frieza.
Yeah. It gets more angular later on because they need to meet deadlines, and it's just faster to draw angular stuff. Yu-Gi-Oh had the same Yu-Gi-Oh had the same thing going on. It started out Yugi's hair was
unfortunately.
Yugi's hair was actually like a bit floppy looking in the earlier stuff.
Well, you had also just like a dopey face
Is it
too.
like because I only think of those sharp angles when I think of Yu-Gi-Oh hair. Hold on a moment.
Joey Jinochi, rather, his Japanese name is Jinochi. So, he started out with a lot of roundness to his face and hair. And the reason
I see what you mean. Like I'm looking up the first manga volume and like it's still stupid. The hair is still stupid.
Like he's still got the hair, yeah,
but
sure,
it looks more like
portions of it.
looks more. There are more rounded elements to it as opposed to it. Being,
it's
like,
hair as
spiky.
opposed to being a spiked helmet.
I'm not sure that it's hair. To be perfectly honest, but
Well, I mean, he still has spiky protagonist hair, but it's like just drawn to look like hair. Is what I'm saying.
There's a waviness to it that modern Yugi doesn't have. Like modern Yugi, it is just straight up a cosplay helmet.
Yeah, and that's a fairly common art style evolution thing that happens. Like, if you were to compare earlier Naruto to later Naruto, that's the kind of stuff you'll see. You'll also see stuff like, I think the artist Kishimoto admitted that he designed Sasuke specifically, intentionally to be simpler than Naruto because it was easier to draw that way.
So I'm just thinking about the difference here between Western and Japanese comics in that I found that as time goes on, this probably has something to do with the fact that Western comics shift creators all the time. So
Writers and artists.
But costumes in general and designs in general tended to get more complex as time went on. Like if you compare an early Wolverine and an early, Captain America or whatnot to some of the later ones, they generally, there's less like shit on on all of them. And so again, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's new creators, so each one wants to have their own twist on it. Like, this is my Spider-Man design. This is my Batman design.
Well, it's also because the older superhero costumes had that, underwear on the outside look that just looks dumb.
Listen, Superman needs the underwear. He doesn't look right with no underwear.
I agree. Batman does too.
Well, you'll be glad to know that they put the underwear back on for My Adventures of Superman, which is great, by the way.
Yeah, but the thing about that is I love is that Ma Kent is like, this doesn't look right, and she gives him the underwear and a belt. It's like that's a great joke. I don't think Batman needs the yellow underwear as much as Superman needs the red underwear.
Black underwear. It was black underwear. You're thinking of the utility belt.
Was there? Didn't Batman have yellow underwear in at least one design?
No, it was just a utility belt. It was bright yellow. For some reason.
Yeah. Which it needs to remain, by the way. That was the thing I hated about Keaton's return in the Flash movie. That fucking utility belt was black, and it just blended with the suit.
Yeah, that's the whole point of
it's
the color.
It's supposed to blend with the suit. It's supposed to be a...
Okay,
no, it's not. Not Keaton's Batman. Keaton's Batman's belt is an obnoxious canary yellow so that he can see it himself.
Listen, okay, taking aside logic for a moment, because this is comic books, the reason why Superman has red pants in the first place is to break up the monotony of just it being all blue.
Yeah, otherwise he's just wearing a onesie.
Yeah, it's like, and same thing with Batman, where the yellow is supposed to provide some interest to the middle part of his body and differentiate the legs from the torso.
Of course, none of this holds a candle to bright yellow Daredevil.
Okay, bright yellow Daredevil just looks silly.
Well, he's blind.
Yeah, he is blind.
Well, I know, but like presumably
that doesn't mean he's trying to blind everyone else.
I mean, he has to deal with it. Why can't everyone else?
Presumably, he would have been able to get the opinion of someone with working eyes to tell him what his costume looks like,
And then they'll lie to him because they're pieces of shit.
I mean, I don't think anybody knows Daredevil's secret identity, and no, Foggy does. Foggy knows his identity.
Foggy. I was gonna say Stick, but Stick always like disappears before that happens.
Yeah, Stick is like the asshole mentor character, though, so he's not like around a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because it's not like he can go to. I mean, Foggy's canonically like a dumbass, like sloppy person, so I'm not going to him for fashion advice. Actually, that's a funny thing about in Daredevil. Matt is canonically like the well-dressed, fashionable one out of the two of them.
Yep.
Which is surprising, again, because he's blind.
Well, I mean, you can go to a tailor for that shit,
Yeah, you kind of have to take their word for it, though. It's just like, I go to John, and I'm like, hey, John, give me the nicest stuff you got. And then he can give me a freaking grandma wig and be like, you look great.
No, then I'll follow up with, you're Daredevil?
So I see you've chosen bankruptcy. Okay, so, all right, but like... how did we even get on this?
Costumes. And I forgot how we got onto costumes.
We started on
drawing. Yeah.
We started on manga art and then shifted to Western comics. And I think we shifted to costumes because we lost the point you were originally trying to make about that.
Well, to bring this kind of on topic, Pokemon is an example of where the art has definitely changed over time, but kind of in the opposite direction. A lot of the newer designs feel very rounded and cutesy, and many of the older designs have sharper angles to them, which is
sharper angles and simpler concepts, and just generally more of an animal kingdom kind of vibe to them. Yeah. You wouldn't have seen a sentient ice cream cone with a face in Gen 1.
I mean, Magnemite is a sentient magnet with an eyeball.
But that was kind of the outlier, and it was really just there because they needed electric types, and you don't really see much electricity in nature, do you?
I mean, there was a lot of Gen 1 designs, though, that were like, the fuck is this?
I feel like I do feel like a lot of the designs, it's weird in that it's so hard for me to separate my nostalgia and emotions from the Gen 1 designs.
Yeah.
Because I think to some extent they're just always going to be my favorite because they're the originals. I
Well,
don't
they're the ones that I can at least remember all.
like. I can. Well, I mean, I can remember all 151 Gen 1 Pokemon. Like, if I see one, I can name it. It would probably take me a while, but I could name all 151 Gen 1 Pokemon as well. I can't do that for like anything past Gen 3 otherwise.
You know what's a similar kind of art style change? Early Yu-Gi-Oh monsters, like Celtic Guardian and Stone Soldier and whatever else, compared to later Yu-Gi-Oh monsters, which are just kind of like all over the place.
Well, that's when so that's kind of when the show and series kind of started getting its own personality, though, ironically enough, because many of the monsters in early Yu-Gi-Oh are just meant to imitate Magic the Gathering art.
Yeah, because the card game was introduced as Magic and Wizards, and it was just a Magic the Gathering reference, and somehow it became the point of the entire comic.
Yeah, but like, you know, like it being like a dark magician is early on just like a dark magician, you know. It's just like, okay, this is a anime looking magician.
The actual
and there's like dark magician girl. Oh, what if we did that but it looked like Sailor Moon? You know, there's more like uniqueness put into the later Yu-Gi-Oh monsters.
And the early dark magician designs, like when it first appeared in the manga, it looked a lot more like a hooded magician. Like it had the general profile of dark magician, but it was less pointy. If that makes sense.
I'm gonna actually look it up because I'm less familiar with the manga art. Like, because I'm familiar with like the one from the anime with like the pointy hat and the shoulder things.
Well, he still had the point on his hood and the shoulder things, but they were less emphasized, I guess. Like the overall profile was more like it was just an ornate cloak.
Also, was this card ever supposed to be good? Because I'm looking at its stats and it looks really bad.
Look, in the really early days of Yu-Gi-Oh, having a high attack power was basically all a monster could do.
Like it's it's 7 stars, so you need to sacrifice 2 things in order to play it, right?
Okay, here's the thing. In the comic, the sacrifice rule wasn't introduced until the third Duel Monsters arc. The Battle City arc introduced the sacrifice roll as some sort of expert house roll, you know? And the stars meant absolutely fuck all in Duelist Kingdom. So
yeah, because I'm trying to remember. Like, I'm pretty sure in the anime he just like plays it without sacrificing anything a lot of the time.
You're thinking of like the earliest seasons. Yeah,
there were no sacrifices in the earliest seasons except for like the ritual spells that were introduced at the very back end of
yeah, but like early Yu-Gi-Oh, nobody was playing it because they'd rather just play Summon Skull, which had a higher attack. No, same attack, but 1 tribute.
Oh yes,
two.
In the actual card game, Summon Skull was seen as vastly superior because it was a single sacrifice with 2,500 attack.
25.
Yeah. It's only like actual shitty stat was its defense, but like if you've got a 2,500 attack stat that you can get out that easily, you're not putting it in defense mode. So,
but its slow defense also means you could search it out with Witch of the Black Forest, which was another early card.
Which is why that got banned for a while. Yeah.
See, hearing you guys talking about Yu-Gi-Oh is very funny because I actually play Magic, so it's like you're saying things in their words that I presume make sense,
right?
But I don't understand, and this is what talking to Magic with somebody must sound like when I do it.
I mean, we're talking about like the early days of the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, which is when the appeal of the card game was that it was a lot simpler than Magic the Gathering. Fast forward to today, and
you mean I gotta read?
No, you gotta read really tiny walls of text that are like miniature essays that you can't read without a magnifying glass.
So the thing about Yu-Gi-Oh text that has kept me from trying to get back into the game is that the way that it's written makes less sense to me. Once you learn like the lingo, Magic cards generally make sense.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Yu-Gi-Oh text nowadays. They sort of standardized, like years and years ago, they re-standardized how Yu-Gi-Oh cards have to be phrased so that they would have less disputes at tournaments over the way things are said. Because cards used to be written in this kind of like inconsistent, like casual speech sort of way that made it hard to determine the exact technical meaning of certain cards. So now they have this really, really awkward lawyer-like way of writing the card rules that like almost doubles the number of words everything needs to use to say what it used to say in like 3 words. But now there's so much more on the cards compared to the older days too. So everything has this really, really overly verbose Sonic the Hedgehog way of describing itself. I don't know why I thought of our Sonic Adventure revisit while I was describing that, but that's what it reads like to me. It reads like overly verbose Sonic the Hedgehog describing trading card effects. Whereas with Magic the Gathering, you just have a list of effects on your card.
Don't get me wrong. There are definitely Magic cards that are frickin' novels. So there's a monster called Questing Beast, which is particularly guilty of this. Hold on, I'm looking it up right now. So the Questing Beast has Vigilance, Death Touch, Haste, can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. When Questing Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. It's like, it's a freaking novel, and it's just like, why? Who let you have the entire Webster dictionary on your text box?
At the same time, it's a Magic card, so those effects are actually like sort of separated by line breaks and shit, right? Paragraphs. Yeah. That doesn't happen on a Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's all just one run-on paragraph.
The most indecipherable Yu-Gi-Oh card. Hold on. I see the card that you offered, and I offer Inspector Border.
Oh no.
Well, god. But Questing Beast also has the thing where Vigilance, Death Touch, and Haste. If you don't play Magic, you don't know what those words mean. They're just words.
I mean, there's a manual that tells you what that means.
Oh, I have to do more reading this game.
Which you've presumably read before you do any serious play. And even if you haven't read the manual, you've looked up a few YouTube tutorials, and they've probably outlined the common effects like haste.
Yeah, that's the thing about, like, that's, I think, part of the appeal of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that since everything is spelled out on the card, there's less stuff to learn.
Well, I mean, it used to be the case, but now, because everything chains into a 26 fucking card combo, it's like, you know, to be any decent at the game, you have to like be really invested in how every single card in your deck interplays with every single other card.
All right, so John, I need what is this card called?
It's called Inspector Border. I posted it in the private channel.
Okay, hold on. Let me look at the Inspector Border. Okay, he's it's RoboCop with the skateboard. All right. Machine effect cannot be normal or special summoned if you control a monster. Neither player can activate monster effects unless the number of monster effects that player has previously activated this turn is less than the number of monster card types currently on the field. Ritual Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, Pendulum, and Link. Parentheses. If an effect's activation was negated, it still counts towards the total for that turn. Only count effects that were activated while this monster was face up on the field. 4 stars, and is that light type?
Light. It's light.
Okay, but I have a question, John. How many nanoseconds is this on the field before chaining into some other thing that it summons?
No, it's on the field for that very effect.
Yeah.
Because
this stops your opponent from doing bullshit.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it shuts everything down.
You can't affect monster effects unless the number of monster effects that player has previously activated. Wait, hold on. So neither player.
This would be so much simpler if they could just use if they could use their return key once or twice while typing out this thing.
So neither player can activate monster effects unless the number of monster effects that player has previously activated.
The problem isn't that there's so many different effects. The problem is that it's all dropped on the card in one big blob of text.
So you need to have more monster types on the field and able to do more stuff. Okay, I think I figured it out. Cool.
It's dropped onto the card in one big crunched down blob of text that rarely ever has any kind of line breaks or bullet points attached to it. So you kind of have to just sit down and read through the card and then read through it again to make sure you understood, because your brain probably slid off halfway through your first attempt. And yeah, it's kind of like, and you have to do that for like every card in your deck because nothing can ever have a simple effect anymore, because the way Yu-Gi-Oh is laid out, the cards with simple effects are broken. Like, you know, the best cards in the game are the ones that just say draw 2 cards or bring a monster back from the graveyard. Everything needs to have conditions with sub-conditions now, because that's the only way to balance a card, because nothing actually has a cost in Yu-Gi-Oh. So, yeah.
Man, it was so much simpler when I could sacrifice
card games.
sacrifice my Karibo to bring out Summon Skull and attack for 21,000.
Why did you put your Karibo on the field? You're supposed to keep that shit in your hand.
You're supposed to keep it in your hand.
Well, I thought that Karibo was when it blocked, it kept
no.
all of the different you didn't
Karibo,
take any
Karibo's
damage.
Karibo's effect is that you can discard it from your hand to negate damage.
That's fucking broken. You don't even have to play it?
Well, I mean, it used to be somewhat broken, but it was like the only hand trap in the game back then. Nowadays, we have like 7 billion hand traps. So
This game sucks. Why do people play it?
I don't know. It's just
Because it's all I know.
it's just the funniest irony in gaming to me that the game that used to be the simple alternative to Magic the Gathering became the uber complex combo game.
I guess there's Pokemon, I suppose, if you want the
I
simpler.
suppose, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it
I
is
guess
kind
so.
of a simpler version of Magic the Gathering when you think about it.
Fucking Duel Master just laying in the corners like, all right, baby, my time to
I
shine.
heard
Here we
the
go."
Final Fantasy trading card game is really good.
Isn't that just Triple Triad?
There's a
No,
Disney
no.
one coming out. Hopefully that's good.
There's a Final Fantasy trading card game that was designed by Magic the Gathering players, I think.
Okay.
So I haven't played it, but I've heard good things from the guys at the local game shop. So I'm interested. I just don't have the money.
I see.